Mr. President. I'll take this opportunity to touch on and briefly address what could be described as a lukewarm attitude by this government to this bill. The first sitting week back this year, the bill was listed as the government's #1 priority, with all stages to be completed that week. The second sitting week back this year, the bill was listed to progress as far as possible, and now this sitting week, the third sitting week back for the year, the Children and Young People Safety and Support Bill was not listed as a priority. All the while, we as an opposition have been encouraging the government to listen to the sector and bring considered amendments to this legislative reform. It was only today, following notification from the crossbench and opposition, that we still had questions for Clause 1, and I indicate that I still have questions for Clause 1 that I will put next week, that members were notified by the government that we would proceed with questions on Clause 1 today, only to subsequently be advised that the bill officers would not be available today and that questions would be put on notice and answered later. I find it quite astounding that the government would bring on this bill and then say, we know you have a question, in fact many questions, but you won't get your answers today. I find it quite the change of attitude from this government to try and ram this bill through on the first sitting week back to now, where there isn't even a bill officer available to answer questions from members in this chamber. Nonetheless, we progress with the bill before us, and I indicate that the questions I have today will receive, I indicate that I'll have future questions next sitting week, but I will say that this government should be upfront with the child protection sector and members of this parliament if they intend to shelve this legislative reform, and they should say so publicly, not behind closed doors, if that is their intention to do so. I indicate that the opposition has supported the Honourable Tammy Frank's amendment to amend the title of the bill from the Children and Young People Safety and Support Bill to be the Children and Young People Best Interest Bill. The title of the bill should indicate the intention of the legislation. This therefore foreshadows the intention of the opposition to support a shift from the paramount principle in this legislation from safety to best interests. It is important to note that it is in the best interests to include a children and young person's safety as one of the core rights that should guide all assessments. Keeping a child or young person safe is always in their best interests. The best interest principle does not sit in opposition to the principle of safety. We have thoroughly engaged with the sector and listened to their expertise and their guidance. I take this moment to thank everyone who has taken the time to email us, to meet with us, and to share with us the ways in which they believe we can improve this in-crisis child protection system. The process undertaken between the crossbench and the opposition in engaging with the sector has, I believe, been a true example of what coming together for a shared cause in politics looks like. It's in doing so that the opposition has made the decision to adopt best interests as what we believe should be the paramount consideration. It's been abundantly clear that the sector largely disagrees with the adoption of safety and is for, in the most part, support of the best interests of the child being the paramount principle. It strikes me as unusual that the government would adopt an approach that appears to be contradictory to the views of the sector, and it's disappointing that the government has adopted what could be described as a tin-ear approach to the views of the sector on this issue. As I said at my Clause 1 contribution, based on feedback received, safety is the paramount consideration, results in a one-dimensional application of decision-making rather than a holistic framework that considers safety amongst emotional needs, developmental needs, cultural identity and long-term outcomes, amongst other things, as you would see, where decisions are made in the best interests of the child, with best interest being the paramount principle.
Now, Mr Henderson, this is not another second reading speech. I think you've had the opportunity to make a contribution at Clause 1 previously. Are you nearly ready to wind up with this?
With that, Mr President, I will make my closing comment, which is noting the government's strong opposition to best interests. It's my hope that the government will now come to the table and listening to the sector and what they want and what their expertise is leading this discussion for many of us in the chamber. Thank you.